As a scientist, one of the first things I had to understand, and again, my training, I was trained in the hard sciences, and there was no allowance for any inner experience to have an effect on our outer world to begin with. Number two, I was raised in a relatively conservative community in the Midwest. I was born in Missouri, Kansas City, Missouri. Excuse me, in that part of the world, when you talk about emotions, they kind of get lumped into this nebulous experience. So, thoughts, feelings, emotions are all the same thing. We really don't talk about them much. And by the way, as a male, we don't want to see much of yours. So that was my upbringing. So I began to understand when we go into the other cultures, and I'm referring again and again to this wisdom. We had this wisdom in Western cultures, and it was lost in the 4th century. About 1,700 years ago, it was edited right out of our most cherished spiritual and religious traditions, the biblical edits of the 4th century. It was not edited from the other cultures that we've visited, and that's the value of going into these cultures. And they identify 3 separate yet related experiences that we all have in our bodies, and they literally call them thought, feeling, and emotion. And here's the difference. The thinking they identify with the 3 upper energy centers of the body. The Sanskrit traditions have a 7 energy center or 7 chakra system that they work with. And they say the upper 3 are related to what we call thought or logic processes. So when we think about something, we picture it in our mind, that perfect relationship or peace between nations. But we can only invite it into our lives when we breathe the power of emotion into that thought. The emotion comes from the lower 3 of those creative centers in our bodies. So when we breathe the power of emotion into our thought, we imbue that thought with life. And those 2 energies meet in the one center that is not accounted for yet in our model. It's in our heart, or what scientists call the 7-layer liquid crystal oscillator in the center of our chest. But we'll just call it our heart, because that's what it does. Our heart is creating electrical and magnetic waves that are influencing the world around us based on what we think and the emotion that we breathe into those thoughts to create the feeling. So now we've just defined feeling. Feeling, by definition, from the Sanskrit tradition, is the union of thought and emotion. It creates the feeling. Now what makes this really interesting is that those traditions say we are capable of only 2 primary emotions: love and whatever we feel the opposite of love is. And when you get really deep into the teachings, they're 2 aspects of the same thing. But what they say is when we have our thought, we are either breathing the love of that thought or our fear of that thought to create the feeling. And the feeling then becomes sadness or joy or compassion or anger. Those are not emotions, those are feelings. Now for some people they say, well, you're nitpicking. What difference could it make? And these are the subtle differences between these ancient ways of viewing this inner technology. It's literally a technology, because we can have the same thought or the same affirmation and imbue it with a different emotion and have completely different feelings and create a different outcome. And this is the great secret that was edited out of our Christian and pre-Christian Judeo-Christian traditions when 45 books were removed in the 4th century. 20 were taken out completely. Another 25 were condensed and rearranged. And we know this because we found the information now in the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Nag Hammadi Library, the Coptic, the Gnostic texts. So we know what those texts would have said if we had them. But the interesting thing is, without those texts, we tend to rely upon the written word, the validation, to feel that power in our bodies. I think everyone senses or suspects that there's an untapped potential in the human body. I've been on every continent of the earth, and I've asked every audience I've ever been in, do you feel that that's there? And they say, yes. We feel there's something there, but we just can't quite get it. Why is that? So we have a feeling that there's more to us, but we rely on a written validation in a 5,000-year-old text or a scientific study to tell us that it's true. And this is, I think, the value of going into those texts, as we get to see the words that literally say, in the Gospel of Thomas, the lost Gospel of Thomas, it literally says, when these 2 become one, when thought and emotion become one, then you'll say to the mountain, move, and the mountain will move. And I used to think that was a metaphor. And I now have seen enough to know that moving a cancerous tumor inside the body of a living woman, that's moving a mountain to me. And it's all done from marrying thought and emotion together.